Capitol Hill is reacting fast to President Trump's action in Venezuela. Republicans are largely backing the move, calling it long overdue accountability and a blow to narco-terrorism in the region. Many Democrats are demanding answers about congressional authorization, international law, and how long U.S. oversight might last. Let's bring in Florida Republican Congressman Cory Mills, a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. First of all, your top-of-mind reaction to what took place in Caracas overnight.
Well, thanks, John. It's great to be back with you. First off, I want to go ahead and congratulate the brave heroes who are part of this very successful operation, as well as for the president and his cabinet, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, John Ratcliffe, our director of CIA, as well as Marco Rubio, our Secretary of State. This was an absolute success in every way. Not only does it indict or does it extradite an indicted cartel member, which is Maduro, who is not the legitimate leader of Venezuela. That would be Machado, as we allowed the elections to play out. But this is very much within the legalities of what the president has under his Article 2 responsibilities. But also, we need to note the O2 AUMF, which is the authorized use of military force, which does outline the global war on terrorism. Remember, President Trump actually designated cartels as a terrorist organization. So there's many areas of constitutionality that can play into this. But way before, John, I even came into Congress, Congress abdicated their own responsibilities. Yes, war power authorities are granted under Article 1, Section 8, in particular, Clause 11 through 13. But when you abdicate those roles and responsibilities, as they've done in 1957, 1991, 2001, and 2002, with these authorized use of military force, you're giving the executive branch the authority to carry out operations successfully, such as this one.
Your fellow Republican Congressman Don Bacon of Nebraska applauded the president's move, but he has what you might call a cautionary but. Listen to this. He says, Maduro and his predecessor took Venezuela from the richest to the poorest country in South America and destroyed its democracy. The operations last night are great for the future of Venezuelans in the region. My main concern is now Russia will use this to justify their illegal and barbaric military actions against Ukraine, or China to justify an invasion of Taiwan. Freedom and rule of law were defended last night, but dictators will try to exploit this to rationalize their selfish objectives. Give us your thoughts on that point of view.
Well, my colleague, Don Bacon, I've got a tremendous amount of respect. He was a general in the United States military and has served proudly. But he's right with one regards to having China and Russia brought into this, because when we actually eliminate the dictatorship of Maduro, what we've also done is we've stopped not just the illicit drug trade that has killed thousands of Americans and it continues to plague so many families. But this also, if you think of the timing, you had a Chinese delegation that was on the ground. This is a direct message that we will not stand for dictatorship and tyrannical rule. But furthermore, it stops the illicit oil trade from sanctioned oil of Iran to be sold, which has actually enabled the funding of things like Hamas and Hezbollah and proxy militias, those responsible for the October 7th incident. And with the people protesting and rallying in Iran, which my support for the Iranian people to overthrow the regime, I'm looking at 2026 as the year that dictators fall.
Yeah, the Iranian people are reportedly rising up right now and chanting death to the Ayatollah.
This is the rise of the lions, John.
It is hard to believe what's transpiring in the world right now. Okay, so the fact that all of this was pulled off without any American casualties, only one aircraft apparently hit and still flyable, hats off to the U.S. military for what's transpired here, Congressman.
Amen. Look, our military is the best in the world. We've got the greatest volunteer force, and our Special Operation Aviation Regiment, the 160th, our special operations operators, the squadron members, and those who are part of this, as well as for our law enforcement officers, the DEA, FBI, and others, carried out an impossible feat that went off without a hitch. And so my congratulations to these brave heroes, but also the president and the secretary of war and all those involved in the planning that led up to this, because there was a lot of operational planning that goes into these types of operations. And I can tell you that the execution of this was absolutely perfect.
Okay, but what about what comes next? The president says we're going to run Venezuela in the short term. You can't do that over the telephone. So who goes down there? How are they protected? How does it all happen?
Well, again, I think that's something that we'll look at for the upcoming brief as we come back into session. But it's not uncommon for even in conflict, post-conflict areas to have a caretaker government. It's something that we would see in many of the areas before a duly elected or before a recognized president or leader is actually taking place. So I think the president's just ensuring that we don't fall into post-conflict kind of conflict deterioration, if you will, or crisis, the way that you saw in Libya. And so the president's being very thoughtful and mindful with the great advisory of his cabinet. But I think that it's a very common thing to have a caretaker government until the actual area stabilizes.
Yeah, he says we don't want to get involved in nation building, but he seems to believe that the Venezuelan people are more than capable of getting back on their feet once you get the thugs out of the leadership. Congressman Cory Mills, we appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.